All right, welcome back everybody, and today we are talking about reverse dieting and also the recovery diet. So how to effectively add back in calories when you've been through an elongated fat loss phase and you do not want to add copious amounts of body fat back on, and you want to do it optimally, you want to do it swiftly, intelligently, so you can still look and feel great. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk about adding in calories. So obviously we want to add in calories as we reverse diet, as we get our way towards maintenance, and then obviously if the goal is to build new muscle tissue, we want to get ourselves into a surplus, and a relative one at that. So we generally want to add in calories slowly. The initial jumps may be slightly larger, and again, this is going to depend on whether you've come from a comp prep dieting phase or whether it's what we call a mini cut or an elongated fat loss phase. For example, 4 to 6 weeks can be considered a mini cut. An elongated fat loss phase may be anywhere from 6 at the minimum up to 12 plus. And then again, it depends on your body fat levels. If you've come from someone who's had very excess amounts of body fat to very lean levels, or even just to normal, or what we would consider normal or healthy ranges of body fat. And then we've got to consider as well that third one, if you've come from a comp prep phase. Now, if you come from a comp prep phase, and I'm not going to go into this in too much detail in this video because there could be a video on this quite frankly by itself, you are much more vulnerable and primed to put fat on. You've come from very, very low body fat levels. Generally, hormones are not working as they should, and so are hunger levels. They're a little bit out of whack because of the hormonal imbalances and because of all of the stress of dieting and the very, very low body fat levels. So your hunger cues may be a little bit off. Now, I'm going to assume that most people have come from what we call a mini cut or an elongated fat loss phase. If you've come from a comp prep phase, that's where we may need the recovery diet, which is this initial, there's a larger bump and increase in calories just to improve or to bring back essential levels of body fat, and obviously so that we are not constantly to the point in a detrimental area and we want to overeat to the point where we are consistently gaining too much body fat. So for example, you better to add in a little bit more than a little bit less, rather than adding less and then binging every week and going way over. You better add that little bit more, reduce the ability to want to binge eat or to overeat dramatically. So therefore, if you look at the totality of the week, you're less than if you were to go too low and then obviously be too restricted and binge out. But that's more comp prep. So if we're talking about someone who's in a dieting phase or elongated fat loss phase, you've lost, 10 kilos or so, 5 to 10 kilos, and you've not been in comp prep, super low body fat conditions, your hunger cues and hunger levels shouldn't be too bad. They should be manageable, but again, this is individual. We want to add in calories slowly. And we want to mainly add them in via carbohydrates because that's the primary source in the body for fuel and energy, despite some of the information that is out there. Now, we can add fats in as well. That would be the second area I would add in. Fats, we don't need as many, okay, because they're essential nutrient to the body. But again, carbohydrates is the fuel. And obviously, like a car, we utilize more fuel than, say, oil in the engine. Therefore, that is going to be the main increase. We've got to remember as well, for fats, there is 1 calorie. For every 1 gram, there's 9 calories. And for carbohydrates, for every 1 gram, there's only 4, as is with protein. And what I'm getting at there is if you add in lots of fats, you may add in copious amounts or hundreds of calories and you're not even aware of it. So again, you want to make sure that the essential levels are there. You're getting the minimum fat requirement, the minimum carbohydrate. And again, guys, if you're not sure about this, you can go back on some of my other videos and learn how to calculate your macros, or you can pop a comment in below or DM me or send me an email and I can help you with this specifically. So generally, as just a rule of thumb, you want 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of lean body mass for your fat intake. And for your carbohydrate intake, it's going to depend on your activity level, your metabolism, many other factors. And that could be anywhere from 2 grams at the very low end, all the way up to 5 to 6 grams per lean All right, lean body mass, not total body mass, and on the very high end for someone who's highly active. So we want to be adding increments possibly between 50 to 100 calories, maybe even up to 200 calories initially in the early stages, and you want to monitor this with your girth measurements and body fat, which is very, very easy to do, and your scale weight over time. You've got to keep in mind in these early stages, if you make that initial increase in glycogen, in carbohydrate, you will store that in the muscle cell, especially if you're training, in the form of glycogen. So for every 1 gram of glycogen stored in the muscle, we can have and store up to 3 to 4 grams of water. So you can have this dramatic increase initially, and that can sort of throw off your perception of, oh, maybe I'm gaining a little too fast. And that might not be the case. It could just be because of the increase in initial carbohydrate after the dieting phase where you're replenishing glycogen stores. I want to talk about a new maintenance. So for example, you may have had a maintenance calorie. So when we talk about maintenance calories, we're talking about calories that maintain your current body weight and condition for the most part. Now, obviously, when you have gone through a fat loss period, the new maintenance usually will be different. So one of the biggest mistakes people make when they reverse diet and add copious amounts of body fat is that they actually increase too fast, or they go straight back to their old maintenance. And because obviously their body fat levels and their total body weight has changed, oftentimes so has their new maintenance. And that can be anywhere within a 500 calorie range for the most part. So you want to be aware not to make that too big a jump, and that your new maintenance could actually be slightly lower. So for example, say your old maintenance was 3,000 calories. It might be now 2,700 calories, just for argument's sake. So this is something that you want to keep an eye on, even if you want to become weight stable again, or you want to maintain your condition and you don't necessarily want to add back in any lean tissue. You just want to make sure you get your body fat levels healthy again, or you want to maintain them where they are, depending on how lean you've got, and you just want to obviously reverse and increase calories. One of the main myths is that you can just keep adding calories in and your body will keep accepting them if you do it slow enough. It's not quite the case, because again, genetics and all the other factors that contribute to the metabolic rate are still going to coexist. So if you want to offset that, you would have to continually increase your energy expenditure at some point if you were to continually increase your energy intake to kind of keep that equation there. So it's basic thermodynamics. It's a bit like a seesaw, but there's multiple things on one end in the energy in, and there's multiple things on energy out that we need to consider when we look at, grading our approach to maintenance calories. So keep that in mind, guys. If you've had a maintenance, or you had some calories that you were sort of set on before and you thought that maintained my weight, that was really good, it might not be the same this time around, especially if you've gone through a long fat loss period, or you've lost a significant amount of body fat and mass in general.
Just got some of the old vitamin D, now a bit of a snooze in the car park. If you know, you know. If you don't, check it out. Anyway, I want to talk about rate of gain with you now. So for example, what is the rate that you should gain body weight at, and then more specifically body fat in ratio versus lean tissue? So again, keeping it simple on these YouTube blogs, guys, without going into too much detail, because I want to sort of keep it lay term rather than going into the nuances and the studies too intricately, because it will not help you. So I'm going to give you some takeaways. And again, this depends on, I'm going to split up into 3 categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Okay, so we're looking at training age, and training age is depicted by how advanced your physique is. So how long you've been training intelligently being the key word, because you can train for years and you might not develop your physique because you may have not had access to the right information, or you've not been obviously doing the things that are congruent to building and developing and advancing your physique. So if you are a beginner, obviously you can gain muscle at a faster rate. So you can get up to and we look at this in terms of months. So we can go 1% to 1.5% in your body weight per month, your total body weight. Now, it is impossible to gain just lean muscle. You have to gain fat as well, unfortunately, because, look, unless you're taking performance enhancing drugs, you can sort of even tank that a little bit, but still, that is generally the rule of thumb. So I'd be the first in line if I could stay super lean and healthy and just add muscle, but that's not the case. But we want to mitigate or reduce the amount of body fat that we add versus lean tissue, the whole just seafood diet, eat everything and gain as much as possible. Well, It's not really the most intelligent way to build your physique, especially if you want to look good naked too, because you're going to have to strip that body fat at some point. And if you get into really high body fat levels, it's just unhealthy, and quite frankly, it's going to be a hindrance rather than an actual help. So if you are intermediate, you could be looking between the 0.5 to 1.25% of your body weight per month. And again, these are averages. And then if you're very advanced, you can be looking down at the 0.25%, even 0.5 at the higher end percent of your body weight per month. And again, this is based on the literature. This is based on what we know so far. We're always learning more. So again, take that with a grain of salt. But again, this is what we know from the evidence so far. So when you are increasing and reversing your calories, these are the things that you want to keep in mind, because you don't want to obviously gain weight too rapidly, and at the same time you don't want to be stalling and spinning your wheels to the point where you're in no man's land and you're not gaining any muscle strength or progressing your physique. So keep that in mind when we're looking at, or when you're looking at, your rate of gain, obviously dependent on your goals. All right, there it is. Finished the training session. How's the physique looking? Not too bad, not too bad for off season. Oh. Anyway, so to wrap this up, let's talk about a few things. So we can look at rate of gain when we're looking at reverse dieting, okay? Not too fast, but at the same time, if we're too slow, we're not going to be able to reverse the negative effects. If we have any negative effects of dieting, we're not going to be able to get ourselves at a place where we can start to accrete and grow new muscle tissue, or even maintain and perform at a more optimal or a more effective rate. We can look at, for example, what else do we talk about? New maintenance, okay? That your maintenance calories, or where your calories were before you cut, might be a little bit different this time around. So keep that in mind. Don't just go straight back there. Again, you can do some basic calculations, which you can find in my other videos, or you can comment, or you can even just Google them. They're really easy. Just be a little bit more conservative, especially if you want to maintain the conditioning. And obviously you've not been in comp prep condition, because that is not what we want to maintain. That is unhealthy, but we can still maintain a very aesthetic and healthy physique. And a couple of other things that I didn't mention is hunger cues, well, vicariously didn't mention. When we look at, if we have been in a comp prep state, so very lean, usually hunger cues are not quite accurate, so we have to rely on other external eating factors like meal timing and calorie tracking and all of those other bits and pieces that might allow us to not overconsume food or put on body weight, and especially body fat in excess. We can also look at food volume versus satiety. So for example, if we're still feeling very hungry, there is a point where, you know, those hunger levels and those hunger cues with the hormones that have been unbalanced, we look at leptin and ghrelin, they're the two main hormones responsible for hunger and sort of fat burning. They will return to normal over time, so we might bulk up our food volume but keep it less calorie dense. For example, think about fibrous fruits and vegetables, things that are less calorically dense. So for example, we might not look at processed foods. Instead, you know, we might go towards, say, potatoes and sweet potatoes and pumpkin and things like that, and broccoli and vegetables, to kind of bulk out the meals, watching the fiber, rather than say something refined like a wrap or white bread or chips or something deep fried and again gone through a process, or even out of a packet. That might be like crisps or cakes or snacks, and all of those things which is just very, very easy to get the calories up, and they leave you wanting more. They're very tasty, they're very hyper palatable. So those are things to consider. Now, if this is something that you're still confused about, DM me, email me, ask me a question, and you guys already know, like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay fearless.